Introduced to Jordan Maxwell approximately 3.5 years ago. I was up late at night, and it was about 3 o'clock in the morning when my girlfriend had said, "Hey, you got to listen to this guy." And I was doing homework. I was originally a computer science major, studying network engineering. And I set my books aside, and I walked over to the table, and I flipped on the channel so I could hear the radio in the room I was in, and I hear this guy talking. And the information was so powerful that was being presented, I was absolutely blown away. I went and grabbed a notebook, and I started taking notes because, you know, I've been into the occult since I was about 18, and I've studied mostly stuff on, you know, basic secret societies and pyramidology and the concepts of some UFO ET stuff. But what Jordan presented on that radio show put the entire world system, whether it be religion, banking, or politics, or UFOs and aliens, and the concept of, you know, the alien ant farm, which is Earth, all into a construct that I could basically see with open eyes, kind of like the Matrix revelation. And, you know, if it wasn't for Jordan, in any capacity, I wouldn't be here today. And certainly, you know, myself and a collective group of people that have become researchers, and I like to consider myself, in essence, you know, still a neophyte because I'm not an expert on anything like Jordan. However, so many researchers that we have come into contact with have been facilitated into this particular paradigm as a result of Jordan's research. And like I said, in my particular opinion, Jordan is truly the godfather of occultism. So just wait for this machine to boot up here so I can get to the good stuff. My presentation in part's predicated upon the images, but anyways, the world of Admiralty that we're going to talk about today it's a concept and it's a philosophy. What the system, Jordan explained that there's two kinds of law in the world. There's civil law and there's the law of water and money. Well, we have our common law system where collective groups of people come together and they agree to follow particular behavioral patterns. However, the banking system, or the banksters or gangsters or whatever you want to call them, have collectively, through thousands of years, have set up a situation where they can manipulate people to superimpose a legal system that is not based entirely on law, it's based on commerce. And so this artificial let's pretend construct has basically been superimposed over our law of our land. And as we'll get into it, I'll explain that, or I'll try to demonstrate further that we are not operating in a common law system anymore, although the common law is still here and we need to understand how to access it and how to use it to our advantage. But most people, unfortunately, are so ignorant of what the law is or what the codes are or what the statutes actually say and how they particularly apply to them. They just are used to functioning in a consensus reality that, oh, well, you know, at 18 or 16, everyone gets a driver's license, and, you know, when I work, everyone fills out a 1040 IRS tax form, or because he said, or because your parents said, or because your parents were particularly indoctrinated in a system where everyone is functioning perpetually in this let's pretend game. So we're going to go over a couple things here really fast. This presentation, like I said earlier, it's dedicated entirely to Jordan Maxwell because this is his work, just reiterated in a new light with my own particular spice overlaid. So thanks again, Jordan. So interestingly enough, this ship, or the ships of the high seas in commerce, if you get back to, you know, ancient Europe, the merchant vessels that transported goods and services and commodities and product to make money were called revenue cutters. Okay, it's just a term, not too significant. But the whole system is set up about one thing, money, because the banks and the banks, through their politicians and legislational system, They set up a body of laws to further extract money, or set up a system that money is always flowing up. It's being extracted out of your bodies, out of your sweat equity, out of your labor. So the whole thing is based about one thing: commerce. Okay, Jordan said in ship, when a ship is pulled into a dock, it's docked, and we go back to what happens when a ship pulls into a dock. It has to present a manifest, a certificate of manifest. It's really simple. It's all about forms. Everyone ever see that movie Brazil? Okay, that's pretty much the system we're operating in today, if you take a closer look at it. So you have a certificate of manifest, and it just describes all the property that's on the ship. Ship sits in its berth, as Jordan mentioned earlier. There you go. The mother, and the system that we operate, if you understand Admiralty, it's a very esoteric system, because the banking has been operating longer than 6,000 years, probably longer than recorded history, longer than the Code of Hammurabi, etc. But the mother is a vessel, or all of us are vessels, because, and this is a philosophic esoteric point, but our bodies are a warehouse, and you live within the confines of your skin if you take the concept that you're a spiritual being. Okay, so it's an energy vessel. So the mother is a vessel delivering a product, swimming down the rivers of the birth canal, and it's delivered to the dock, or the dock door. And what is it? It's delivery of a human resource, because that's all we're considered, humans. We're human resources, and you get a birth certificate to vouch for that. It used to be that if a child was born in a common law society, collective society, they recorded in the Bible or some sort of official records, etc. But everything's about certifications, or a B/6 like in Brazil. So certificate of live birth, and we're talking about money. You're a human resource. So what is money? It's energy. That's all it is. The system is set up that it's the control and flow of energy from generally the bottom up, the basis of the foundation of the people, up into the hands of the bankers that further perpetuate and dictate more laws to further extract money. And we'll demonstrate this in just a moment. So battery is pretty much what we're considered. If anyone has seen The Matrix, our bodies are our vessel. It's where we store the energy. We eat food, its energy is transmuted from the sun, it goes up the food chain if you study biology, and the energy is stored in our fat cells. Well, take a look at this. A nursery, in essence, if we're talking to the world of Admiralty, and the ship pulling into the dock and getting the port, coming into port, and we're getting all this paperwork, and it's all about money, the nursery is an energy farm, or a monetary farm. It's a production house, kind of like the Matrix, So we're going to go into some definitions from the Law Dictionary, what these terms mean. Jordan says we need to take a look at words, because we're word-controlled people, right? And I'm not making any of this up. If you look in Ballantyne's Law Dictionary, a human being is a monster. So that's what, when you walk into court, this is how they're looking at you. So you want to get your constitutional rights, you want your liberties, not your freedom, but you want civil liberties. Well, they're working with this guy. How does that apply to you? So let's take a look at what monster says. A monster is a human being by birth, but in some part resembling a lower animal. A monster hath no inherent blood, and cannot be the heir to any land, albeit it be brought forth in marriage. Okay, so what are we talking about here? Are we talking about a human being, which is in the law of Admiralty or the law of banking? We're talking about a let's pretend game. Limited liability, no one taking responsibility for their actions. That's why we live in a corporate fascist system where everyone wants to incorporate and not take responsibility for what's going on. And this guy over here, the real you that's aware and functions in like a state of common law, where it takes personal responsibility for everything he does. And, will make his wrongs right and everything. This guy, it's on a piece of paper only. That's the certificate of live birth. That's the B-6. That's the let's pretend game. So if the construct that is law has two kinds of people. You know, in fact, the spiritual being isn't. You won't find a spiritual being in a law dictionary, but you'll find the definition of a person. But peculiar enough, the definition of a person, they try to get you caught up with a natural person. But how do you define a word with its own word? That's a peculiarity in itself. So, person includes a natural person, a firm, a co-partnership, or an association, or a limited liability company or corporation. The entire essence of the let's pretend game is to get you to be one of these things, a corporation, functioning in a state of fascism, in a limited liability world, a let's pretend game, where no one takes responsibility for their actions. So we get into the construct of what the physical world versus the legal world is. You have the world of land, which they try to superimpose this matrix body over, of the world of admiralty. In the Constitution, which is predicated upon common law, we deal in the world of gold and silver. What happened to that, guys? You know, now we're dealing with Federal Reserve notes, which a note, by definition, is evidence of a debt. And anyone heard of national debt? Or how about income tax? You know, all income tax does is go to pay national debt. It doesn't pay your streets. It goes to pay the national debt with the Federal Reserve. And the Federal Reserve came into act in 1913. And that's a whole story in itself. And the taxes that are generated as a result of using Federal Reserve notes, who collects that? The IRS. When were they started? The same year as the Federal Reserve, 1913. But guess where the IRS is based out of, guys? Puerto Rico. It's not even an agency of the United States government. You know, that's a whole story in itself. So we have consciousness over here in the physical realm, but the legal realm, it's completely devoid of consciousness. We have present or represented. You ever hear the term in court? You're represented, or you need an attorney to represent you? Because we're playing in the let's pretend game over here. And when you're dealing in the world of the physical, you have lawful. In the legal realm, in the world of statutes and codes, we have legal. And again, real versus fiction, substance versus reflection. We have the real thing, the real essence of substance, or we have the thing named. And we also have the creditor, or we have a debtor, a lender or a borrower, object versus symbol, a physical body, or a paper certificate, such as a birth certificate. So, in essence, who you really are considered to be legally is a fiction. A concept or idea expressed as a name, a symbol that legally has no consciousness. It is a juristic person. It's en legis. It's a word written on a piece of paper. It's not you. You see, when we're dealing in real law, when there was a controversy between people in society, in like a tribe or a community, if there was a problem, it was, you know, someone would come up to the elders in society and they would bring you before a committee and they would hash it out before a committee of like the Sanhedrin. If you take it back several thousand years in the Judaic cultures, they would take you before the Sanhedrin. And you'd have to give your testimony before the Sanhedrin. Each party testifies, right? So if you look at the word testify, it comes from the word testicle, because you have to hold the males, which were the ones that functioned in commerce. The women were excluded from that. They hold on to their testicles, and if someone's caught lying, what they were holding was what they would lose. That was one of the penalties. I'm not kidding. So otherwise, it's social and political ostracism, or they can't function in commerce. They become basically a persona non grata. They don't exist. They don't function in that society. They need to move to a new location. So if we're dealing in the world of reality, in the world of spirituality, minus the particular religious construct, the concept is you're having a union between a man and a woman, typically, and you're having a union before your Creator, before your, based on your belief system, and that's all the unification you need, whether it be before a priest or a rabbi or what have you. It is your particular contract, your covenant with the person that you love. But now, we take a step forward into the world of the statute system, or the codified system. We have the let's pretend game. Well, you need to get a marriage license. You have to ask for permission to do something you would normally do based on your own accord and before your creator force or your particular religious or philosophical belief system, whatever that allowed for. But now we need to ask for permission from the man if you can have this relationship. Why? Because the whole system at large is predicated on commerce. It's now been boiled down to a business relationship. And if you don't think so, I've heard Jordan say this a million times, the first person that you're not going to see is the Lord. You're going to see the attorney. Okay? And you're going to talk about who's getting what, and it becomes a matter of contract. So you have to get an application license to marry. So this is what we're operating in over here. We have a three-party marriage. Instead of just you and your wife, I guess it could be a four-party marriage if you're still incorporating the spiritual dynamic of your creator force. But now you have your wife and your husband and the state. And if it's an application for a benefit or permission, that permission can be revoked or denied. And then you get into this, the construct of jurisdiction. The state, if they gave you anything, they can come in and take it away or tell you what to do and how to do it. And then you basically have to live and operate under the codes that are prescribed that dominate the application for the birth certificate, etc. So, such things as application for the permission to travel freely, you got to get a driver's license. License, in essence, if you follow it, it's predicated on a system of business. Okay? I just thought that would be funny. Yeah, and the name is all caps, and we'll get into that stuff a little bit later. License is certificate or the document itself which gives permission, authority, or liberty given to or forbear for any act. So what we're talking about here is, anyone heard of just getting up on their own free will and accord and going somewhere because they just cared to do it? Or maybe it's a necessity, you need to go somewhere to get food and survive. You have an inherent system of rights that are bestowed upon you by the Creator, that predicated on natural law principles. What goes up must come down, etc. But again, the world of energy, or the guys that are considered or interested particularly in one thing, how to extract the wealth and power from the energy sources, which are the batteries that are you. Because all money in society nowadays is generated a result of your potential and what you put into the system. Because Federal Reserve notes, they have no value whatsoever. They're backed entirely on the full faith and credit of the U.S. population. So without you backing these things up, they have no value at all. So in order for you to use this money in society, you have to get up and work every day and put something into the system. And what you reap, you'll sow. So the system cannot perpetuate itself without you. So what is the vehicle that is the courthouse? Well, the courthouse is a very fascinating thing. It's a primary facility that I like to call them chop shops, meat grinders, or wood chippers. But these entities or institutions or systems are the primary method or modality, or one of the primary methods or modalities by which your sweat equity is extracted out of you on a consistent basis. We take it from the ground up as something petty as parking tickets. Although parking tickets aren't particularly handled in court, they can be, and we'll talk about how you do that later. But parking tickets or traffic tickets, and traffic tickets and parking tickets are the #1 generators of indirect taxation or revenue in the state of California. Period. If you look at the numbers, you will be appalled. So check this out. You have a courthouse, Masonic Lodge. Looks kind of similar, right? Courthouse, Masonic Lodge. You have a courthouse, and you have a Masonic Lodge. I'm just leading you somewhere. Okay, you have a judge, the Honorable Smiley, and you have his gavel, right? What is this? A Masonic gavel. So what I'm trying to say, and I'm not going to get into a big Masonic presentation here, I'm just setting you up or to inspire you all to do a little investigation as to what the system that we're operating under today is founded upon. Who were the founders? Who were the founding fathers really? Were they a great bunch of guys, as we were told in our history classes? Or was there a greater plan? Was there a grand dynamic, the great work? What were they aiming to achieve? And if you do a little investigation, you'll find out that it's about one thing: business. So Jordan mentioned earlier, judge rules from the bench, okay? This is the basic derivative. Bench in Latin, banc, and bank. And the judge is a banker. And if you look at the whole legal system, how it works today, it's based on banking entirely. Now, river directs the flow of currency. We're talking again the world of admiralty. It's about, money is often referred to as currency. And again, the court system is always after our currency. The courts are set up to regulate the flow of currency, and the entire court system as it operates today is a let's pretend game. And we'll take a look at this. The let's pretend game. Why is it that you have to file, you ever heard the term motion in court? You have to file a motion in court. Why? Because the thing doesn't exist unless you say it does. It's basically your paper soldier in the let's pretend game. You're yelling out, you're calling out to the judge, I'm filing a motion, because you're not dealing in the world of substance where you're communicating with parties openly and stating the facts. Okay, I was injured on or about this day, and this is how I was damaged, and these are my witnesses. Now, based on the evidence I'm presenting, that guy should lose his testicles. What do you think about that? And and the other guy presents his evidence and says, well, that guy should lose his. So, and then the committee of the Sanhedrin, or your judge, or whatever your elected official that's directed to give the rule a law or balance the books, he makes the determination accordingly based on the evidence that's presented. But now we have a system of judges in our corrupt system that typically make up the laws that go along because they have a vested interest in the outcome of every court case. And I'm going to show you guys some things that's going to get the wheels turning for you. So you guys ever heard the term circuit court? Circuit court, circuit courts, energy, battery, money, banking, electricity, gross national product. It's all about energy. What happens, though, when you interrupt the flow of energy or the currency flow? You break the circuit, right? Or you get charged. Okay? You get charged. That guy's wearing a black robe like a judge, by the way. So anyways. Okay, but when you go to court, or when you go to court, you're charged with counts 1, 2, and 3. And the judge is a bank. But if you look at the etymology, the concept or the term counts 1, 2, and 3 are actually accounts. Why? Because the judge sits on the bench and he's a banker. It's all about the extraction of your sweat equity, and we're proceeding forward to why. Okay, what happens when you hire an attorney to represent you? Mr. Shyster here. Again, why do you need to get an attorney? Because the whole thing is a let's pretend game, because the attorney, if you take an analysis of it, we're dealing with attorneys, not counselors in law, not lawyers particularly. We're dealing with an attorney that's there to represent the certificate or piece of paper, the artificial person or the natural person that cannot stand and speak for himself properly, or the presumption is so, unless you rebut it. So he's representing the artificial legal fiction, the reflection, the thing named the debtor or the borrower, because why? We're dealing in banking. You're there, most of the court cases or lawsuits are of and pertaining to money, are they not? Why else do you go to court? All crimes are commercial. If you look at the legislation and the codes, everything boils down to a dollar value. And in fact, I have, not with me today, I have a case, the president of Tyco, he was convicted in court, and he was awarded, or the sentence was like a $25 million fine, or the end result was like $25 million fine or something like that. If he didn't pay it, he was going to jail for life. What did he do? He whipped out a check, cut it, paid it to the court, and the game was over. He didn't go spend one day in jail because it's based on bookkeeping entries, the entire thing. So if you got enough money, as most of you have an inherent understanding, if you got enough money, you're not going to jail because you can get lots of attorneys to represent that piece of paper to make a deal with the judge or to properly represent you, such as OJ, and get off. Okay, so when you hire an attorney, let's take a look here. An attorney occupies a dual position which implies a dual obligation, okay? His first duty is to the courts and next to his client. So as an officer of the court, in any circumstance,